The latest developments on the Y&R Restless signal a dramatic escalation in what has already become one of the most emotionally devastating crises in Genoa City. As the disappearance of Dominic Winters pushes every adult connected to him toward fear, guilt, and desperation. At the center of this unfolding emergency is an urgent meeting involving Detective Bureau, Sharon Newman, and Tessa Porter. A gathering driven not by procedure alone but by a shared understanding that time, mental stability, and moral clarity are all rapidly slipping away. The purpose of the meeting is clear and deeply troubling. To form a strategy to stop Mariah Copeland from continuing to keep Dominic hidden and to ensure that the child is returned safely before irreversible damage is done. What makes this situation uniquely painful is that the threat does not come from a faceless criminal or a distant enemy, but from someone who loves Dominic deeply and is nevertheless no longer capable of making decisions that protect him. As Dominic's absence stretches on, the emotional atmosphere surrounding his family grows heavier by the hour. Fear mutates into panic, and panic gives way to a kind of quiet desperation that settles over those who are waiting for news that never seems to come. Devin Winters and Abby Winters, already scarred by past losses and betrayals, find themselves sinking into an increasingly unbearable state of helplessness. Their anxiety is not abstract or theoretical, it is visceral, rooted in the terrifying knowledge that their son is somewhere unknown, under the care of a woman whose mental health has been visibly deteriorating. Each moment without confirmation of Dominic's safety feels like another failure to protect him, another reminder that love alone is not enough when circumstances spiral out of control. Mariah's continued absence alongside Dominic only intensifies these fears. Abby and Devin are not merely worried about where their son is, they are consumed by the question of what he is being exposed to emotionally and psychologically. Their concern about Mariah's mental state is no longer whispered or cautious, but urgent and unavoidable. From their perspective, the situation has crossed a critical line. Mariah is not simply overwhelmed or struggling, she is someone who, at this moment, is fundamentally unfit to care for a child, particularly a child who has already become the center of a kidnapping case. The fact that Mariah may believe she is acting out of love only deepens the tragedy, because it underscores how disconnected her perception has become from the reality of the danger she is creating. Sharon Newman's involvement adds another layer of complexity and emotional weight to the crisis. As Mariah's mother, Sharon is caught in an agonizing position between empathy and responsibility, between her instinct to protect her daughter and her moral obligation to ensure Dominic's safety. Her decision to sit at the same table as Detective Bureau is not taken lightly. It represents a painful acknowledgement that this situation has moved beyond what family loyalty alone can manage. Sharon understands Mariah's vulnerabilities better than anyone, and that understanding is precisely what terrifies her. She knows how fragile Mariah's mental state can be when fear and obsession take hold, and she recognizes the signs that her daughter is no longer acting from a place of stability. Sharon's presence in the meeting is not about condemning Mariah, but about confronting a reality she has spent years hoping she would never have to face again. Tessa Porter, too, is drawn into the crisis by love, grief, and a growing sense of dread. As Mariah's partner, Tessa is forced to reconcile the woman she loves with the actions that now place Dominic in danger. Her participation in the emergency meeting reflects a painful shift in her own understanding, that supporting Mariah does not necessarily mean enabling her. Tessa's internal conflict mirrors the broader moral dilemma facing everyone involved, the devastating realization that compassion without boundaries can sometimes lead to catastrophic consequences. Sitting alongside Sharon and Detective Bureau, Tessa becomes a bridge between emotional loyalty and harsh reality. Torn between hope that Mariah can be reached and fear that she may already be too far gone to listen. The decision by Abby and Devin to seek additional support on February 5 marks a turning point in the narrative, signaling that private measures and quiet efforts are no longer sufficient. Despite employing private security teams and working closely with law enforcement, they recognize that the situation demands more than standard protocols. Their plea for help is not rooted in distrust of the system, but in the mounting evidence that this case requires exceptional insight and experience. The stakes are too high, the variables too unstable, and the emotional volatility too severe to rely on conventional approaches alone. This is where Detective Bureau's continued presence in town becomes critically significant. Highly regarded for his skill, intuition, and ability to navigate emotionally charged cases, Burrow represents a rare combination of authority and understanding. Abby and Devon's hope that he can help locate Mariah and Dominic is not blind optimism, but a calculated belief that his experience may succeed where others have stalled. Burrow is not merely tasked with finding a missing child, he is being asked to untangle a situation where love, mental illness, and criminal behavior are dangerously intertwined. His role is complicated by the fact that Mariah is not an anonymous suspect but a deeply connected figure within a family already torn apart by grief and fear. As the hours pass and Dominic remains missing, the emotional toll on everyone involved becomes increasingly evident. The family's desperation is no longer contained within private conversations or guarded expressions, it spills outward, influencing every decision and heightening every fear. Abby and Devon are forced to confront their worst nightmare not as a distant possibility, but as an ongoing reality, one in which every delay feels like a betrayal of their role as parents. Sharon and Tessa grapple with the unbearable truth that loving Mariah may now require standing against her, a choice that carries its own kind of heartbreak. What makes this storyline so profoundly unsettling is the absence of a clear villain. There is no easy target for anger, no simple resolution that can restore what has been lost. Instead, the crisis exposes the fragile line between protection and possession, between care and control. Dominic's safety has become the focal point through which every character's deepest fears and unresolved traumas are magnified. The longer Mariah remains hidden with him, the more the situation threatens to collapse under the weight of unspoken guilt and irreversible consequences. As the emergency meeting sets plans into motion and additional resources are mobilized, a sense of inevitability begins to take hold. Something will change, and not everyone will emerge unscathed. Whether Mariah can be reached before tragedy strikes remains uncertain, but one truth is already clear. The choices made in this moment will echo long after Dominic is found. In Genoa City, love has always been both a source of salvation and destruction. And this crisis stands as a brutal reminder that even the purest intentions can lead to devastating outcomes when fear and instability are allowed to rule unchecked. The unfolding crisis on the young and the restless continues to deepen as the search for Dominic Winters enters a far more complex and emotionally charged phase. One that requires not only professional expertise but intimate knowledge of Mariah Copeland's inner world. Detective Burrow's reputation as an exceptional investigator in missing persons cases is well established, and his ability to remain methodical, calm, and precise under pressure has already proven invaluable. However, despite his competence and unwavering focus, there is a crucial limitation that even Burrow cannot overcome on his own. He does not know Mariah. He has no personal history with her, no understanding of her emotional patterns, no instinctive sense of where she might run when fear and instability take over. His success in this case cannot rely solely on procedural excellence. It depends on access to the human connections that shaped Mariah long before Dominic vanished. Burrow executes his responsibilities flawlessly, gathering timelines, analyzing movements, and assessing the psychological profile of a woman in crisis. Yet the absence of a personal link to Mariah creates a gap that cannot be filled by logic alone. He can predict possibilities, but he cannot feel her impulses. He can map routes, but he cannot anticipate the emotional pull that might guide her choices. For Devon Winters and Abby Winters, this realization becomes painfully clear. Their desperation sharpens into clarity as they recognize that the highest chance of finding Dominic lies not in expanding security perimeters or adding more personnel, but in turning to the people who know Mariah best, the ones who have loved her, worried for her, and witnessed her unravel before. The search must shift from purely investigative to deeply personal. This shift is precisely where Sharon Newman and Tessa Porter become indispensable. According to emerging information, this is the moment when both women step forward, not as passive observers or secondary participants, but as central figures in the effort to bring Dominic home safely. For Sharon, the decision to intervene is driven by an overwhelming sense of guilt that has been steadily building since Mariah disappeared. As a mother who has spent years navigating her own mental health struggles, Sharon is haunted by the realization that she failed to see just how much pain her daughter was in. The signs were there, subtle but persistent, and Sharon's hindsight becomes a source of quiet torment. She does not blame Mariah, Instead, she blames herself for not recognizing the depth of her daughter's despair sooner. Helping Abby and Devon is not merely an act of responsibility. It is Sharon's attempt at redemption, a way to confront her own shortcomings by doing everything in her power to prevent further harm. Tessa's role is shaped by a different, yet equally profound, emotional conflict. Although she has made the painful decision to move forward with a divorce, her feelings for Mariah have not disappeared. Love does not dissolve simply because a relationship changes form, and Tessa understands this truth all too well. She knows, with a certainty born of intimacy, that Mariah would never act this way if she were mentally stable. The woman who once built her life around protecting the people she loved would not willingly place a child in danger unless her judgment had been compromised by fear, obsession, or emotional collapse. This understanding does not excuse Mariah's actions, but it reframes them, transforming anger into concern and condemnation into urgency. Tessa's worry extends equally to both Mariah and Dominic, creating a dual sense of responsibility that fuels her determination. She is deeply afraid for Dominic's safety, but she is also terrified of what this situation may do to Mariah if it continues unchecked. Every additional hour of isolation, every decision made under psychological strain, increases the risk that Mariah will cross a point of no return, legally, emotionally, or both. Tessa's resolve solidifies around a single purpose: to help, regardless of the personal cost. Her involvement is not motivated by nostalgia or unresolved attachment, but by an unshakable belief that abandoning Mariah now would only deepen the tragedy. The urgency of the situation culminates in an emergency meeting held at the Chancellor's estate, a setting that underscores both the gravity of the crisis and the convergence of power, influence, and emotional vulnerability. Devon, Abby, Sharon, Tessa, and Detective Burr come together not as equals in experience, but as individuals united by a shared fear that time is slipping away. The atmosphere is heavy with unspoken tension, each participant aware that the decisions made in this room could determine whether Dominic is found quickly or lost further into uncertainty. This is not a meeting defined by formality or hierarchy. It is driven by necessity, a collective acknowledgement that no single perspective is sufficient on its own. During the meeting, Sharon and Tessa emerge as vital sources of insight. Drawing from years of shared memories, emotional patterns, and moments of crisis, they begin to suggest locations Mariah might have chosen as refuges. These are not random guesses or speculative leaps, but carefully considered possibilities rooted in Mariah's history, her need for familiarity, and her instinct to seek places that feel safe, hidden, or emotionally significant. Each suggestion reflects a deeper understanding of Mariah's psyche, the places she associates with comfort or escape when the world becomes overwhelming. Detective Burr listens intently, recognizing the value of information that cannot be obtained through surveillance footage or phone records alone. He responds thoughtfully, asking questions that refine these ideas into actionable leads, ensuring that no emotional insight is dismissed or overlooked. Burr's strength lies not only in his analytical skill, but in his ability to integrate personal knowledge into a structured investigative framework. He absorbs every detail, updates his assessment, and begins connecting dots that were previously invisible. What emerges is not a definitive answer, but a clearer path forward, one shaped by empathy as much as evidence. As plans evolve and leads solidify, the determination to act swiftly becomes paramount. The upcoming developments reveal that Detective Burr will ultimately join Devon and Abby aboard a private jet, a symbolic and literal escalation of the search. This decision reflects a shared understanding that waiting is no longer an option. The choice to take to the air signals urgency, commitment, and an acknowledgement that the mystery surrounding Mariah and Dominic must be resolved as quickly as possible, before fear hardens into irreversible consequences. For Devon and Abby, this journey represents both hope and terror, the possibility of answers intertwined with the dread of what those answers might reveal. The collaboration between law enforcement and family reaches its most intense point here, as professional duty and personal desperation merge into a single mission. Each participant carries their own burden of fear, guilt, and responsibility, yet all are driven by the same imperative: to protect a child who cannot protect himself and to reach a woman who may no longer recognize the danger she is creating. The search for Dominic is no longer just about location or logistics. It has become a race against psychological collapse, against the consequences of unchecked pain and misunderstood love. As the private jet lifts off, the mystery surrounding Dominic and Mariah deepens rather than resolves, casting a shadow over everyone left behind in Genoa City. The outcome remains uncertain, but one truth stands unchallenged. The choices made now, guided by love, guilt, and determination, will reshape relationships and redefine accountability long after Dominic is found. In a town where emotional wounds often linger longer than physical ones, this crisis threatens to leave scars that will endure, reminding everyone involved that even the strongest bonds can fracture when fear overwhelms reason, and that redemption, once sought, comes at a cost no one can predict.